guys, hope you all are doing well. It's your boy Yin Yanger, and today we are going to be doing some animation. So a while ago, this video appears on my recommended page. The title is 4 New Ways to Practice Animation, and the thumbnail is No Bouncing Balls. Now honestly, no bouncing balls sounds pretty fun, so I thought I would try these 4 new exercises out, and why not record it and make a video out of it. Now let's watch the video and find out what Alex Crick has for us today.
4 animation exercises, and not one of them is a bouncing ball. There's the old saying, practice makes perfect. But if I'm honest, I'm not really that interested in perfect animation. I'm mostly focused on giving you a set of tools that will help you make the animation you want to make. Practice is great at building confidence using those tools though. So in this class, I've put together 4 exercises that will help you build your confidence as an animator, practice the skills you already have, and maybe pick up a few tips and tricks along the way. These are all beginner friendly, but I'll show you how to increase their difficulty if you want an extra challenge. I'll be using Animate CC, but you can use any software or medium you like. I've tried to keep things fresh and come up with some new exercises you might not have seen before. They're called the magic dot, the jelly jump, the switch, which, side note, is maybe the most useful animation shortcut there is, and the morph. Let's dig in. The first exercise is something I call the magic dot. This is where we create a simple dot and try to make it as interesting as possible using only the power of animation. So I'm going to create a new scene. It's at 12 frames per second, and it's 1920 by 1080. You can do anything you like. I like 12 frames per second for 2D. So the first thing I'm going to do is just draw a dot. And then I'll turn on onion skinning and make a new empty frame. And then my goal now is just to bring as much life to this dot as possible. And the reason I like this exercise is because you don't really need to be able to draw to do it. You can be a stop motion animator, you can be a motion graphics designer, you can be trying things out for the first time, and you can really get a sense of what different spacing does to the speed and the energy of your motion. So
Okay, I'm going to pause it right here. I watched ahead, and the basic idea is to give as much life to a dot as possible. I think that would be pretty simple, so let's get to it. So for this first exercise, I decided to go and do just what was instructed. I started to draw a dot, made it a little bigger as the opening scene, and then I decided to make it move around a bit, speed up, slow down, all of that kind of stuff. Now I decided one dot just moving around the screen, that's pretty boring if you ask me. So I added another dot. So basically, the story behind this dot is that he's lonely, he doesn't have a friend, and then out of the corner of his eye, because he has an eye, he sees something moving. And he goes for it, but he can't catch it because it's too fast. Then he becomes sad, he stays, a little bit in the same place for a while, and then behind him, the dot that he saw before came, snuck up on him, and then the dot jumped in the air from happiness of actually, finding another dot to play with. And then the other one jumps to react and stuff. And I ended up drawing a nice little heart around the two at the end to symbolize their friendship. This is the final version. I think it looks pretty good. It's kind of choppy, but you can still tell the story of the dot. I really like it. You can see their happiness, their joy when they become friends. And yeah, that's it for the first exercise. We're going to move on to the second one.
next up, we have the jelly jump. In this exercise, we're going to try to make a block of jelly, or jello, depending on where you live, jump in the air and settle down. We're focusing on creating weight using anticipation and overshoot. So we have a drawing of some jelly here in Animate CC. I've split it up into layers so that I can lock the background layers. The first thing I'm going to do is create the most important keyframes. So we've got our starting frame. I'll create a new frame at the top of the jump, and I'll duplicate the first frame and use it as the final frame. I'll make it hold for a while by pressing F5, and I'll play that back. That doesn't really feel like a piece of jelly jumping right now. So what do I need to add? Well, I'm going to add a anticipation pose. So this is where it squishes down a little bit. And to do that, rather than redrawing it, you can redraw it if you're so inclined, but in this example, I'm not going to. I'm just going to transform it. So I'm moving the center transformation, like the orientation point for the transformation, down to the base, so that as I transform it, the base doesn't move around too much. I'm going to squish it down. And then what we know about squash and stretch is that it needs to retain volume. So if I squish it down, it also needs to squash outwards.
Okay, I'm going to pause it right there because otherwise this video is going to end up being a long video. So I think let's just get started. For this one, it's pretty simple. I think I just started drawing a jelly-shaped cube. Well, sorry, a cube-shaped jelly. And then I tried doing one of those, like, weirdly shaped pumpkin jellies. I don't know. And then I just tried to make a normal jelly. You can probably tell that I just copy and pasted one side onto the other and then cleaned up the edges a little bit. But yeah, instead of redrawing every frame, I used Alex's technique and I just squished and stretched using the select tool. So this one was honestly pretty simple, but there was one part that I had a pretty hard time doing, which was I watched it and for some reason the squashing and then right after the jumping didn't look right. So I tried making the jelly jump like while he was forming back. So like while he was unstretching. And that also felt kind of weird. So I just did a little jump instead, and honestly to me that still looks weird, but it's the best I did. So this one I would say by far was one of the most difficult for me because of the squash and stretch. I actually had I'd heard of squash and stretch before, but I never actually used it and learned the concept before. So this was actually really good for me because, I learned squash and stretch and the jumping motion. So, that was really interesting for me. And I'm gonna just skip to the end product. I ended up coloring it. The jelly ended up being pink, and the background ended up being greenish. So basically, it was about the same color as the original, but yeah, I colored it, and I had a little bit of trouble because I had to go on every frame and cover up the top because it turns out that the top had a little hole. So for every frame, I had to cover up all of the holes. I added these little speckles, but then the fact that they just kept moving from frame to frame was actually kind of annoying, so I didn't like it. And this was about the point where I added some color to the dot animation that we did earlier in the video. But that's it for this. Let's go on to the next one. But before that, Alex actually shows in his video another way to make the jelly jump a little more difficult. So I just wanted to showcase that in this video. Here it is. I didn't actually do it, but yeah.
Or with adding a stretch frame like I'm doing here. This is a fun exercise because it's a simple way to practice overshoot, and it also makes you think about a pretty common 5-pose pattern, and that's pose, anticipation, action or breakdown, overshoot, and end pose. This is something that's really useful for loads of different kinds of animation. If you want to make this exercise more difficult, you can try putting another cube of jelly on top and animating it responding to the cube below. This can get tricky as you start to think about how all the shapes are interacting.
Okay, now it's time for the next one.
A third exercise is something I call the switch. Our goal here is to transition between the two very different keyframes as quickly and easily as possible. We'll do this by hiding the transition behind motion. This is something that sleight of hand magicians use to hide things from their audiences, and it's endlessly useful in animation. You could take a lot of drawings or some sort of real thinky problem solving to figure out how to get from this keyframe to this keyframe. But what I want to do now is show you that you can hide this morphing behind some motion, and your audience's brains will fill in the gaps for you. I'm going to duplicate this keyframe, and because they're basically at the same spot, I'm going to use anticipation, like a little jumping motion, to hide this transformation. So we anticipate down, and then for this pose, I'm going to duplicate it. I'm just going to overshoot upwards. So this makes it feel like we go down, we travel upwards really quickly, and then settle back down.
Once again, I'm going to go on and do it myself. And if you guys want to watch the full thing, of course, go check out his video. Now let's get on to it. Okay, so for this one, it was as simple as the previous one. Instead of drawing the same thing he did, I ended up drawing a square and a circle. I made cute little eyes because why not? And then I wanted him to transition into a circle. So the funny thing was the square had circle eyes, so I decided to do the circle with square eyes. But then it kind of looked like glasses, but I just ignored that. I made the pupils square as well, copied the mouth, and yeah. And then I decided to add some color. I thought it could be different colors, but then I realized that I would have to do color transition as well. And I was totally not prepared for that. I'm still learning the basics of animation. I'm not going to do color shifting. So basically, I applied the same squash and stretch from the jelly, and I made him, yeah, that's it. So I'd go back and forth, add frames in the middle, and then each one would be jumping up, and then finally the circle jumped down, and I watched it. It looked pretty good. So I was pretty happy with this one. And then the disaster struck. I decided that I wanted to add color. So what I did was I went to the background and I made it green. But then I didn't color in the eyes, so then there was that problem. So what I did was I chose the same color, and for every frame I would go and I would just tap
Pretty
the
easy
background.
because I
And
knew
I
that
was-
all of the shapes were closed since I used the ruler. But anyway, this is what it turned out to be. I hope it was decent. It looks a little bit choppy, but I kind of like it. Let's move on to the final one. This one was by far the most difficult because I had done morphing before, but I decided to do animals. So I did this pretty simplistic elephant, and I liked it. I added an eye. It looks pretty cute, honestly. But then I realized that I would have to close off all of the holes, but then that looked pretty wrong. So I tried to redo it again and again and again, because I wanted to use the background filler to like to fill in all of the colors so that I wouldn't have to manually color it. And then I decided that would be too hard because then if I did the elephant gray color and then the giraffe yellow color, I would again have to do color shifting, which again I really don't want to do. So after that, I drew the two keyframes, which obviously were the elephant and the giraffe. I did the giraffe. It was pretty good. Now, I hadn't actually yet realized at this part of the video that I didn't want to do color shifting. So I did all of the spots, and then I actually ended up coloring each of the spots in. And I decided to do a rainbow, and it looked so good in the end. And then I realized that I couldn't keep it because then I would have to do color shifting for all of these colors into gray, which kind of sucks. But I took a screenshot before I erased all of the colors, so I colored it. I took a screenshot because that's when I realized, and I continued on. So it was pretty easy. I decided that the neck of the giraffe would turn into the trunk of the elephant, and the legs would have to become a bit thicker. We would have to add a tail. So there were all these small transitions, and also the front leg would have to move forward a bit and bend a bit each time, and then the body would also have to become bigger. And I don't know how to put this, but it became very cursed in the end. The big body of the giraffe with the small neck, and then the really thick legs. And the fact that it was so pixelated because of the fact that I was stretching it out did not help. So as you can see, it got pretty messy. At one point, what I decided to do was I went back on every frame, and then I fixed up all of the spots that didn't look right. And it worked. It looked less cursed because the lines weren't always crossing and messing up, and it worked. It worked. That's it. That was kind of in the way, it was the simplest yet the hardest, because I had to draw each frame for this. For this one, I wanted to draw each frame because it seemed easier than doing like keyframes. But the fact that it took like a long time to slowly edit each part of the giraffe into the elephant, that took such a long time. I'm pretty proud of it. I'm going to skip to the end now because this honestly took quite a while. Anyway, this is what it ended up looking like. It was a lot worse than I thought, honestly, because the neck, at some point, the body just stopped transitioning, and it was only the neck that was transitioning into the trunk of the elephant. So I kind of feel like it didn't move, all of the parts of the body, they didn't move in sync. But, I'm still learning, so yeah. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to leave a like, subscribe if you want more, and leave a comment. Also, go check out Alex's channel. He does amazing videos. I watch them all the time, honestly, and they've really helped me progress in my animation. So, that's it for today's video. Bye!